Hey everyone, this is Johnny and welcome to episode 95 of the Travel Like a Boss podcast. I'm here with my buddy Dr. Shannon Weeks from Portland, Oregon, now living in
Washington, D.C.
Now living in Washington, D.C.?
We live in Washington, D.C. now for a little while, and then we're moving to Lisbon, Portugal.
Very cool. So I'm going to check that place out as well, so I'm excited. Shannon was on the show.
Let's see, 2 years ago, almost to the day, episode 3 of this podcast.
So if you want to go back, you can hear him and his lovely wife, who's also a doctor, talk about moving to Chiang Mai or Thailand, starting their journey, selling their practice in Portland.
Yes, we just started then. We were literally a month in Chiang Mai when we met you.
And this was before the term digital nomad was really popular.
It wasn't in our vocabulary.
It wasn't in mine either. It was, I met these guys, well, Shannon and his wife, doing Muay Thai. That was kind of my old life. Yeah. And 2 years later, we're still friends. Yeah. And we've seen each other in how many countries now?
Gosh, 4 or 5 at least, I'm thinking. Yeah. I can't, it's hard to keep.
Saigon for sure.
Saigon, Europe. Oh, you know what? We were in Europe and we missed each other by a day or two.
We were in Berlin.
Yes.
I think we missed each other by a day. But it's okay. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is not only are you a friend, but by default, you're also my personal doctor.
Yes.
And even though I try not to bug Shannon with my issues, he is just more than happy to always help.
Always ready to help.
So I appreciate that. So we're going to talk about, a lot of people actually have this question, and we're going to try not to bump this too much. It gets a bit loud in the podcast. But one of the questions people have pretty often is, concerns. Should they be concerned about their health while traveling? Should they be prepared with travel insurance? Should they, watch what they eat? Should they, what about this? What about that?
Yes.
And that's why I wanted to have you on the show.
Okay. Yes. So there's a lot there. So let's get more specific. What would you say were some of the bigger questions you get asked?
So I will talk about what my personal choices for travel insurance and health insurance are in this podcast. But I think more important than that is preventing these things in the first place.
Preventing injuries. Like you just had an injury. Did people know about your injury?
They do now. So I was in a cast for about a week. And what had happened was, according to the first 2 doctors I saw, was a fluke accident. I was getting older, so as I exercised, I had a common, what they call a tennis injury, something that just happens, as a man ages and he's walking around.
You injured your calf.
I injured my calf, tore muscle, and there was no like real reason for it. So my first doctor was in South Africa. Really good, really smart guy. Really took, time, patience, well educated. Second doctor was here in Chiang Mai. Also really took his time, like we did an ultrasound and really cared, but also very Western as in, okay, this is how we're going to fix it. Here's some anti-inflammatories to take. Here's some painkillers. Here's some tramadol. Rest it for, 3 to 6 weeks. Right. And then that's it.
Right, which is the general standard of care if you go to a general practitioner for your for an injury like that. So here in Chiang Mai, there's a very active community. There's a big CrossFit community. Mm-hmm. A lot of people do Muay Thai, and there's a lot that goes that I get approached for. How could I have prevented this? And you were the same way. And so there's a few things when someone comes to me and they say, I've been CrossFitting or I work out and I've got neck pain, I got back pain, I injured this. There's some basic tests that I do to see, okay, where is your health in general? We did this with you, right? A lot of, especially for men, a lot of the injuries that come from training often come from an imbalance in their musculature versus their mobility. Mm-hmm. With men, I find that there's a lot of focus on getting stronger, which is a great thing, but not as much. The mobility is almost secondary to that. So let's take the squat. People have people come. I was doing some squats and now my back hurts, or I injured my hamstring or something like this, right? So the first thing I have them do is say, okay, well, let me just see you in a standing position. Just sit down in a normal, comfortable squat. What we would call what you see around here if you go out in the villages in Thailand. People rest in an Asian squat, right?
It's like a fob squat. People smoking while sitting on the street,
sitting around the campfire, sitting around eating, and they're just and the human body was designed to rest this way, right? So you're standing up, which is your you're completely folded, your butt's on the ground, and your feet are flat on the ground.
Okay.
Many people cannot, especially Westerners, cannot do that. They can't simply sit in a squat position comfortably. That is normal physiology. That is one of the ways we are designed to rest. We have these giant muscles in the front of our legs, they're meant to hold us, and it's supposed to be a relaxing position. If someone can't do that, then in my mind, they've lost that position. They've lost some basic physiological function, right? This is simple. Being a human, this is what humans do. Every child can do this, all of them. And if you see a child, if they're playing around when they sit, they naturally go to that squat position, right? It's a normal, comfortable resting position.
So I think people listening to this, there's going to be two categories. And you guys can try this while listening, because you should be able to sit in that position for around how long?
You should be able to sit there all day. It should be a resting position.
Okay.
It should be comfortable, right? At least 20 minutes.
Okay.
Right?
So here's a test. Is feet flat on the ground.
Yeah.
Slowly kind of go into a squat.
Just sit down.
And then keep your back straight.
Your back can be straight. You should be able to rest your arms on your knees in that position. Your knees can be, and you can point your feet in any direction that's comfortable. It should just be a nice, comfortable squatting position.
The most important thing is the feet have to be flat.
Flat, yeah.
So your heels have to be down. You can't be like on the front of your balls of your feet.
Right,
Okay.
and so if you have lack flexibility, you won't be able to do that.
Okay, so if you guys can't do that, keep listening, because this definitely applies to you, and that's the park I'm in, where and I think honestly it was part of my childhood growing up, seeing that as a fobby Asian thing to do. So I was very against it. I was like, I'm never gonna go in that position because it makes me look like these fobby guys who sit.
What is that word?
So fobby is fresh off the boat.
Oh, okay.
So someone who basically in growing up, a lot of people who hung out in street corners or in front of school that sat that way and smoked cigarettes, I didn't want anything to do with them. So I was like, I'm not going to go in that squat. I had no idea that it was going to be detrimental for my health.
Oh, interesting. Because I grew up in Southeast Asia where that was just how people sat. And so as a kid, there was nothing abnormal about sitting that way. It wasn't until you got to the States where that's not that you didn't see that. But that's how everybody sits outside of the, still in the villages here in Thailand. And of course, here in Chiang Mai, everybody sits like a Westerner. But
so for the people who just tried it and they're like, I can do that, it's easy. Do you think that, because I've met people like that are very just natural, either they're usually just naturally limber. I don't think that they actually practice that. Maybe they're not actually that strong, but they just happen to be able to do that.
Well, they have normal physiology.
Okay.
Right? This is what they have. They're just, that's normal. There's nothing exceptional about that. That's a normal physiological state. So sit in that position.
So if someone can do that, can they just stop listening to this episode? Or...
No, so that's where we start, right?
Okay.
We start there. In my opinion, in what I've seen, is that you have an athlete who comes to you and they can't do that. In my opinion, is that they have no business putting weight on their back until they can get that position, because they're going to end up, some point there's an injury. There's a knee injury. The body will give out at some point because you've lost this margin of error. Yeah. So you can't do a general squat, but you throw 100 kilos on your back. That'll lead to injury. If you look at an Olympic weightlifter, they have incredible flexibility in the bottom position and in their shoulders. You don't see that as much, in your general cross, because everyone wants to get strong, but you got to have the mobility part first.
So now that I've been through this injury, 100% I can tell you guys, please listen to this and don't just assume, it's not that big of a deal. It's a huge deal.
Well, and so what happens, let's say you're 30 years old and you can't do that. I can almost predict what your motion will be at 40 and at 50 and at 60. And that, that becomes the person who, I've fallen and I can't get up. That person, when they're old, was the person who couldn't sit in a squat when they were 30, right? Because you get progressively, it doesn't get better on its own. But you can rehab, and the great way to rehab that position is you should visit that position, that squat position, if you can't do it, about 20 minutes a day. Not in a row. You can do a minute here, 30 seconds there, 45, and as deep as you can go. A lot of times it helps to hold on to a pole or a the leg of a table to get in that position. But if you just have a stopwatch and every time you sit in that position, you put it on, by the end of the day, you want to reach 20 minutes. You do that for a month, and you're going to increase that position. Okay.
And I've been doing that every day for 20 minutes, kind of spread out through the day. Every 30 minutes, I take a break from my computer and I'll go outside and stretch. Sometimes I'll just go in this position for, even 30 seconds. It's hard, to be honest. Like, if you can't do it, it's hard.
Yeah.
when I go to the gym, in between sets of doing push-ups and other things, I just sit in this position for a minute.
That's fantastic. The other, as far as for people who work on their laptops, we talk about the importance of a standing desk, which is fantastic. And the other position that I recommend is the squatting desk, where you put the laptop on your chair and you just squat down in that Asian squat.
Wow.
And work in that position. And so if you're working 6-7 hours a day on your laptop, and half or 3/4 of it is standing, the other quarter is in that squatted position, you'll find that's real beneficial.
So for someone like me who I've been working on it for a while, but to be honest, I haven't been that consistent. I haven't been putting in the 20 minutes a day. Realistically, if I really just actually dedicated to it, are we talking months, years? How long?
And really it's just a matter of volume. The more volume you do, the quicker you'll be able to get there. And what I found is once you have that position, it's hard. It's almost like riding a bike. You can lose it again, but it's once you have it, you tend to keep it.
Really? Okay. So that is my goal. By my birthday, July 11th, next year, 2016, I will be able to comfortably squat for 20 minutes at a time.
Fantastic. The next position that I always have every patient do just to see what their general mobility is that there's this test called the sit-stand test. And it was there was this research done by a couple Brazilian doctors, and they followed some elderly patients for 6 years. And they correlated the ability to do this test with longevity, meaning that the people who could do this test, score a perfect score on this test, lived longer than those who could. And the test is this. It's simply sitting down and getting up without the use of your hands. And so the easiest way to do that, if you're in a standing position, is you cross one leg over the other, you squat down, and then just get up without the use of your hands. If you can squat down without falling or without needing to put your hands down, then you would score a 5. If you can get up without using your hands or your knees, then you would score another 5, so a perfect score would be a 10.
Okay.
And they would score you on this scale. So if I had to use a hand to get up, I would lose a point. If I had to, if I wobbled a little, I would lose a point.
So for those listening at home, you can try this right now while listening. You can try to sit onto the floor without using your hands.
Yeah, so you're standing up, cross one leg over the other, and just squat down, and so you end up in a cross-legged position. Okay. And then with your hands out in front of you, don't touch the floor, just rise up. That again is normal physiology. There should be no age where you can't do that.
So let's say someone's 90. Should they still be able to do that?
They should still be able to do that. So I have an interesting story with that.
Yeah, okay.
So my wife and I, last year, we did a clinic at a hill tribe about 2 hours south of here. We went there. We were invited by this organization called Daughters Rising. Yep. And there's a village about 2 hours south of here that is very remote. No electricity except for a few solar panels, and they had some medical supplies donated, and we went up to have this clinic. It was a fantastic experience, and we were there for 2 days, saw almost the entire village. And a lot of people they would come and say, okay, what issues do you have? And there were many issues, but a lot of it was pain, right? Because they worked out in the field, and they work from when they're young to they're very old, and say, oh, my knee hurts, my back hurts, my shoulder hurts. And so I started working. I remember I had this elderly gentleman. He was, I think the translator said he was 72 years old, and my bench was literally just a bench, right? Mm-hmm. And he had an issue with his knee, and so I examined his knee, and he needed an adjustment on his knee. So I put him flat on his back, and I went to adjust it. Now normally to do this adjustment, I grab the ankle and I put my hand, my wrist under the crook of their knee, and I bend the knee up into their chest. And I usually go to see how flexible they are, where their end range of motion is, because I don't want to hurt them, I want to find that. Well, this gentleman, who was 72 years old, had the flexibility of like a 14-year-old gymnast. Like there was no resistance. He was able to completely fold his leg right up into his chest. And it turned out that everybody was like that. Now, when they were sitting around waiting for us, you would have a whole family. You'd have a 2-year-old, and then a 10-year-old, and then it would be the older brother, and then it would be the sister and the grandmother, and they would all sitting in this. They would all sitting in this squat position, right? Even the 90-year-old grandmothers. And so the idea of a tight hamstring was not in the vocabulary, because their relaxing position from the time they're a child to the very old people would carry a little chair that was about a square piece of wood that was about an inch thick, right? So they would squat down. They would put this little, this piece of board under their bottoms to sit, and then that was their chair. That was the extent of their chair, an inch off the ground. But none of them had the flexibility issues that we see in the West. I mean, none of them. And it occurred to me, it's like, oh, well, where would they ever get that tightness? This is how they relax. They sit in this position. And so they have incredible, what we would consider incredible ankle flexibility and incredible flexibility in the hamstrings. But then I realized, no, that's normal physiology.
So that knee injury he had, if he wasn't that flexible,
it would be way worse.
Okay.
No question about it. There's no question about it. People get old because they stop moving. And the more inflexible you are, the less mobility you have, the older you feel, and the older you actually, it's harder to recover from injuries. Mobility is the key to that's the fountain of youth.
Okay, so if there's someone in our life who's, 70, 80, 90, and they can, they have this pain, they can't get up on their own, we should still have compassion to them because maybe they didn't have this information before.
They need to practice it.
Yeah.
If you have a grandmother who's frail, they should practice getting off up the ground, because this is one of the big things that leads to I wouldn't say an early death, but an elderly person who breaks a hip, their demise comes much faster because they stop moving, and it's, had they had worked on their mobility at a younger age and kept working on it, and so that getting up from the ground was not a task, but just a normal, easy thing to do, then you would have far less problems with that. But if you sit all day or lie all day, that becomes a problem. You can practice getting up, right? And that's a good thing to do. 10 times, have them sit on the ground, and whatever they have to use to pull themselves up, do that for reps of 10 every day, and soon they'll, instead of using 2 arms, they'll use 1 arm. Instead of using both knees, they'll use 1 knee. And there's no age in which your musculature and motor mobility won't improve.
So I'm all about preventing these things from happening in the first place. So whoever's listening right now, you're probably not 70. So start doing this now, because when you are 70 and you can't get up and you're having these issues,
that 70-year-old person couldn't squat when they were 30. I can almost guarantee it.
Oh, you know what? And so if you can't squat today, that means if you don't change something, you're not going to be able to squat when you're 70. You're going to have so much more likelihood to have these injuries, and a worse quality of life, more medical bills, maybe even earlier death. So, I'm so glad that we're thinking about these things.
Yeah, and on your show notes, I'll post that study, this Brazilian study, because it's fantastic. They followed this group for 6 years, and correlation doesn't equal causation, but this particular study made a lot of sense as to why someone who could do that would live longer, and I'm sure they lived. When you move more, you tend to be a happier life.
Okay, I like that. So for other, physically, we got it. We have to be more mobile. Is there like a program or a website or anything that you would recommend?
Yeah, there's several great ones out there. The ones that I really recommend, and one that I do, is called gymnasticsbodies.com. Okay. And there's another great website out there called gmb.io, which I believe stands for Gold Medal Bodies. These are both mobility, functional strength programs that you can follow the videos on. They lay out the rep schemes, and I find them fantastic.
What about that Ido Porto guy
So Ido Porto, I'm a huge fan of. I actually went to one of his seminars in Copenhagen last year. And what I found is that he has taken bits out of all these. So he has studied, for example, with Coach Sumners, who puts together the gymnasticsbodies.com. And he has incorporated all kinds, dance and capoeira and gymnastics and all kinds of different movements to really have a fully functional human system that is both strong, mobile, and makes working out sort of more like play. And I'm a huge fan of what he's promoting. And if you look at videos of him, he walks the walk. He's what seems like superhuman strength, but it's really for gymnastics, it's just basic stuff.
I actually just saw a video of him and Conor McGregor, the UFC fighter.
Oh yes, he works with a lot of UFC fighters for like a lot of improvisatory movement kind of stuff, and it's fantastic.
So I'll have links to all this as you guys check it out. I actually started going through just the first video on gymnastics bodies, and so I recommend that. You can follow my progress, because I'm going to be definitely doing this, just because it was such a big wake up call for me. That injury. It was, I think the scariest part was for the first week when I had the cast on, I didn't know if it was going to be a 2-week fix or if it was going to be a 6-month fix.
Right.
And I think that's what, really woke me up. and maybe realize, and I need to figure out how to prevent something like this in the future.
Yeah.
And this is it, right?
Mobility is a huge part. Mobility and diet are the two biggest things.
What about that book, Becoming a Supple Leopard?
Supple Leopard, yeah. So that, I forget the author of that. He's a big CrossFit guy. Also, I find is great stuff. He himself, he's in his mid-40s, and he's super flexible, super strong. He's got a lot of great videos on mobility, on Kelly Starrett, that's his name, Kelly Starrett.
Yeah, Kelly Starrett and Glenn Cordoza, I believe.
Yeah, and Kelly Starrett, I believe, was the author of that, and he's got a lot of great stuff on mobility. And I've known some people who have actually gone to his CrossFit box in, I believe it's in San Francisco, and have nothing but good things to say about him. He really knows we can look at somebody and realize, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Your body's not able, let's back it off a little. Yeah. And the hardest thing for men is that you usually have to back it off a few notches, and they don't you don't. It's a little humbling, but which I like about that Gymnastics Body, because it puts you through a few tests and well, can you do these basic things? And you're like, oh, geez, I really can't do that. And it's kind of humbling. Like, you got to take your fitness back if you're not, but it fixes these weaknesses pretty quickly.
Okay, I like that a lot, and he also has something called a mobility wad, which is
the mobility wad. Yeah, great stuff.
The workout of the day.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I like him a lot.
Okay, but it sounds like regardless of which one of these you choose, just do one of them.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, any of them is better than none of them. Right?
Okay, and does this apply to both men and women?
Absolutely. What I find, women tend to be more flexible. I don't know if that's anything particular in physiology. If the exercises, the women that I see tend to be more on the yoga or dance scheme of things, which tends to have more mobility in it anyway. Women, I find, have the mobility but need to work more on the strength. Actually, add weights. Men usually need to back off on the weights and add more mobility.
Okay.
In general.
So let's say there's a man or a woman who has pretty much zero. I mean, obviously kind of zero, but very low strength. Yeah. But let's say they're very flexible because they do yoga all day. What are the downsides of them not having the strength?
Downsides of not having strength. Well, muscles move bones, and so you need having, especially for women, where as they get older, the risk of osteoporosis go up. Really, the only way to remold bone, the only way that I know that bone strengthens is through weight-bearing exercise. So for if you're doing, whether it's lifting weights or lifting yourself, as you grow older, as you continue to do that, your risk of fractures go way, way, way down. Being strong is not it's not a nice thing to have. It's like essential for health. And strong is separate, different for everyone. Of course, a small woman is not going to be able to lift as much weight as you, but it's proportional.
Okay.
Right?
But so in general, everyone should be able to do 10 push-ups?
You should be able to do 10 push-ups. You should be able to do 10 pull-ups. Women maybe not 10. There are women out there who can do 10 pull-ups. Yeah. But if a woman can do a dead hang pull-up, that is
just one.
Just if they can
that's
do
enough, right?
That means they got some real strength going.
Okay.
If they can do 2 or 3, that's some real upper body strength for a woman. And I know same from a man. Of course they tend to have more musculature. They should be able. 10 pull-ups is, if you can do 10 dead hang strict pull-ups, that's some solid strength.
Okay. But it kind of, just to get started, 100% of people, both men and women, should be able to do one pull-up from a dead hang.
Oh yes, you should, and that's a basic skill, right? Yeah. You should be able to pull yourself up, right? That's going to come into handy someday. You want to, it's that whole I fall and can't get up. Well, if you could do a pull-up, then you won't have that. You'll be able to pull yourself up. But many people, they lose that mobility, they lose the strength, and they literally can't pull themselves up. And so you want to be able to get off the ground. You want to be able to pull yourself. This is just basic physiology, and that we have lost. That is. Reminds me of that movie WALL-E. You remember the humans in WALL-E? Well, that's not too far off, right?
All right, so that's homework for everyone. So as far as, I think we have the injury stuff kind of covered. I know there's a lot to talk about, but what about other health? So people that travel, they're worried about getting sick. About disease.
Sure. Well, and the sickness, it depends on where you are, right? So when people talk about traveling, getting sick, usually they're talking about traveling in Asia, not going to France, for example, and getting sick. And it's a lot of the basic things. What I found is that sometimes they actually get a food poisoning. What's more common is that the bacteria that is common in the foods and in the area in Asia is different from where they came from. Okay. And it's that contrast that makes them sick, where you can see, well, how come they ate it and didn't get sick? It's not necessarily that there was a pathogenic bug in that. but that they're not, that their immune system or their gut biome is actually different enough where that causes usually diarrhea or something along those lines.
So I guess some rapid fire common questions that people would ask. One, let's assume they're coming to Thailand. They're coming to like Chiang Mai, maybe the islands or something, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe they're going on like an overnight jungle trek, but nothing crazy, right? They're
Sure.
not in East Africa.
Yeah.
Should they get malaria shots or pills?
I personally don't take malaria pills. I know people who have gotten malaria and it makes you sicker than you've ever been.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of malaria in Thailand. I know there are pockets of it. Malaria does not worry me here in Thailand. There are areas of Africa where I've known people who've gotten malaria. I've known people who've gotten malaria who've taken the pills. Okay. That is a personal choice. I would never tell someone not to do it. I personally, here in Chiang Mai, I don't know. I know there's dengue, and we both have a mutual friend who got dengue here. But I don't take malaria pills here in Thailand.
Okay. I've been in Thailand for 7 years, never taken malaria pills. I personally never met anyone traveling in Thailand who has gotten malaria.
I haven't. Dengue, but not malaria.
Yeah. And it's good to know that malaria isn't instantly just going to kill you.
It can definitely kill you. Right. No question.
Okay.
Malaria is a deadly disease. And the people, I mean, nowadays, if you get treatment, as a Westerner, people usually get malaria, leave the country that they get it, and they get, the proper antibiotics. Okay. But they're, sick, really sick. You're not going to work. You're not functioning kind of sick. But it absolutely kills a lot of people.
Okay. So I've met a lot of people who have been on malaria pills, and met a lot of people who have been very sick taking those pills.
The pills definitely cause side effects. There's no, I mean, that's the trade-off. Okay. They'll make it. Usually, it's a nausea type of sensation. Sometimes there's some neurological things that you get from malaria medications.
I think a lot of people were sensitive to the sun.
Photophobia. There's a lot of that.
So they couldn't be even outside in Thailand because it's sunny.
Well, yeah, they'd have to wear cover. I mean, not everybody gets those, but it is a common side effect. And
here's the biggest problem is even though they're not supposed to drink, almost all of them still drank and then they got really sick.
Definitely not supposed to drink alcohol on malaria.
So I think the verdict for malaria is we cannot legally or ethically say do not get your malaria pills, but we can say both of us personally do not get it.
Again, it's in Chiang Mai. I don't know. Malaria is not common here in Chiang Mai. Yeah. I'm sure there are pockets of Thailand where it's more common, but I haven't been there. I don't know anybody else who's personally gone there. And you know what? If
you guys think you're going to be there, you're probably not. So, personally, I would say it's not worth all the side effects because the side effects are real. The chance of getting it is very, very slim. Yeah,
if you're in the islands in Chiang Mai and Bangkok, that you're the chance of getting malaria is quite low.
Okay, but dengue is a real thing.
Dengue is a real thing.
So dengue fever is also known as breakbone fever. You also get it from mosquito bites. Yeah. And the best way to prevent mosquito bites is mosquito repellent, maybe. And then, to be honest, a lot of it's common sense. Where if you start getting bitten, leave, go indoors. To be honest, every single person I know who's actually gotten dengue or has had a really bad attack of mosquitoes, they knew they were getting bitten, and they're like, "Oh well, I'm out at dinner, or I'm out, I'm doing something, I'm outside. There's nothing I can do about it."
It's a rare one. It's tough. I mean, we're here in Chiang Mai. I get a mosquito bite every day, right? But it's a little rare. It's not as deadly as malaria. You make you
still
sick.
Sucks.
It's terrible. You're very sick. You're in pain.
I have a lot of compassion for people who have gotten it, and I'm so sorry for anyone who's been through it. And I always tell people, every time a friend has it, and they post on Facebook, I always say hey, if you want me to come over and bring you food, anything, I'm happy to. But 100% is use mosquito repellent, even if it's just citronella. Just carry it with you. Use it, especially during dawn and dusk when the mosquitoes are out. If you start getting bitten, do something about it. Don't just.
And most of the restaurants here will actually carry it.
And you can ask for it. 7-Eleven has it. Just overall. And I heard the only actual remedy that I've actually heard people use that works is papaya leaf.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, and it's weird because here's the thing about a lot of homeopathic or natural medicine. Sometimes, things are, you're like, okay, well, yeah, maybe it does help a little bit. Maybe boost your immune system. Maybe it has some effects, but it's usually not this cured it. But dengue has no cure. The hospitals can't really do anything. They can give you an IV drip so you don't dehydrate.
Yeah, they usually give you an antibiotic that
yeah,
it's fairly effective.
Are they pretty effective? The
Yeah,
antibiotics?
I mean, you're still going to go through the course.
Okay. But I've heard and from personal like friends that the papaya leaf and it basically is just like blended papaya leaf with water, and it's very bitter and it's disgusting. But they've sworn that's the only thing that's helped.
Fantastic.
So
it won't hurt you. So I would try whatever it takes to get over it quicker.
Okay. But preventing it is key, right? Number one. Is there any real way to prevent, getting food poisoning or sickness?
Prevention of food poisoning. That's also a difficult one. Mm-hmm. Most people get food poisoning through some sort of waterborne thing. So they're eating vegetables that have been washed with tainted water, for example, or they're buying fruit that's already been pre-cut and washed with water. Generally, if you're eating something that's been barbecued or boiled like a soup, you're less likely to get that. And it's almost always from something that's been carried in the water.
So a lot of people are afraid to eat, like, let's say, they call it street meat, like barbecued meat on the street.
Yeah, that tends to be safer because it's had they rarely serve that stuff rare. It's usually barbecued pretty well through, and I eat it daily.
So even though it may almost logically seem more questionable, than let's say having...
It's safer than the fresh salad, put it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
So... Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people, they'll have, let's say they'll become vegetarian just because they're afraid of getting sick.
Yeah, or they choose not to eat the meat but if the meat's been cooked, and all the meat here is cooked, again, generally you get food poisoning from some sort of waterborne carrier.
Okay, and so in general, let's say your immune system is low, are you more susceptible to food poisoning?
Of course,
okay.
You're more susceptible to anything. If you get, if you get that traveler's diarrhea, taking a probiotic, taking charcoal, that stuff absolutely does help.
Okay, and they sell charcoal tablets everywhere in Thailand, in 7-Eleven, things like that.
Yep.
Okay.
The thing to remember when you get something like that, right? The body is getting rid of it. So when you get this terrible diarrhea, something's not that. Many people will take Imodium, for example, which will stop the diarrhea. But the problem is that you still have these bugs that are in there. The diarrhea is your body getting rid of it. So you want to hydrate because you can get sick from losing all that water. So you want to make sure you're hydrating, but that's the body's way of dumping it. And so when you take something like Imodium and you stop it, now that's great. Now that the Imodium works by stopping motility in your gut, but you still have that nasty bacteria.
Okay. So if you're like on an overnight bus or something and you don't have a bathroom, use Imodium for that night.
Sure, I mean, you got to do what you got. You got to do what you got to do. I'm saying that in general, when the body is dumping stuff, let it dump. Stay well hydrated. But
that's the cure of it. Is just let your body run through it. Have some charcoal.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it depends on the illness because sometimes you've got if you've got immediate dysentery, something more serious, then you absolutely need to see go to the hospital. But for most of this stuff, it passes within a few days.
Okay, so one thing about Thailand in general, but a lot of places in Asia, is if you walk into a pharmacy for pretty much any reason, they'll give you antibiotics.
Yes, and the pharmacies here, if you tell them your symptoms, they're more likely to give you something that the doctor probably would have given you anyway. Okay. That's what I found in the pharmacists here, is that it's true you don't need a prescription for an antibiotic. If you tell them, your symptoms, or you go with someone who can... And generally, the pharmacies here, you'll find an English-speaking pharmacist, especially in these areas of Chiang Mai.
So the great thing about Chiang Mai is you don't necessarily need to see a doctor. You can just go see a pharmacist. They're going to give you pretty much what you would have got at a hospital. In
general, for stuff like this, because they see it all the time.
Okay.
And they're familiar with it.
Okay. So, but what are your thoughts about taking antibiotics for, for what would you take it for, and what would you, what do you think it's overly used for?
Okay, so that's an excellent question. There are absolutely appropriate times to take an antibiotic, but that usually requires a professional opinion.
Okay.
There are times when people are given for example, a common in America is someone will get a sinus infection, and it's common for them to get an antibiotic. But if you look at the literature, that antibiotic for sinus infection is only effective about 4% of the time. So that's like 96% of the time it does not work for that particular issue, the acute sinus infection. And 1 out of 10 people will get some sort of ill effect from the antibiotic, nausea or whatever. So it's very specific to specific. The right antibiotic for the right bacteria will 100% work. If you've got an abscess in your tooth, which is a very dangerous place to get an abscess, and you get the right antibiotic, that's life-saving. If you've got a sinus infection and they give you an antibiotic because they want to give you something, and you look at the literature, it's like the literature says this fails 96% of the time. Why are you giving it? That's not the appropriate time to take it. So, and I find everywhere outside of America, it's less given as a first defense.
Okay,
that's my experience in Asia and in Europe. They don't just hand it out like candy as they tend to do in the States.
Okay, so actually, you say in the U.S. they give it more often.
Way more often.
Really? Okay.
Way more often. You're more likely to get it.
Okay. So what about? So let's say you have a cold and they give you antibiotics.
Yeah, of course. No, that makes no sense because a cold is a virus.
Okay.
Right, and you'll see that in the States too, and oftentimes that has to do with the amount of time that the doctor has to examine you when you have a cold. But antibiotic for cold makes zero sense.
Fever?
No.
Okay.
No. The fever is the cure.
Yeah.
That's important to understand. That's the body's way of attacking whatever is going on, and you do not want to shut that process down. You want to monitor it because high fevers can do great damage. But the fever is the cure. If you cut that fever off, you tend to lengthen the time of your illness, especially for something like a cold.
So for me, like just rationally, even as a child, I always thought, okay, like I'm sick, let me sweat this out. Let me get,
It's great. Yes, that's exactly what happens when you have a fever. So the viruses and bacteria, they die off at a certain temperature point. It's around 103, 104. And so as your body raises that temperature, it increases your immune system, increases antibodies going to that area. And by shutting that off with, say, something like a Tylenol, you are shutting off the body's own healing process. Many people get worried because, they worry more for a child because if the child gets a very, very high fever, that can be a very dangerous thing. But usually, it can be managed.
So usually around like how high is too high? Like what temperature?
Well, for adults, when you start getting past 104, then it becomes, well, what's going on here? And it really becomes why. If it's something like meningitis, which is a very serious illness, then that needs to be treated at the hospital. Generally, for a flu, if your fever is around 103, which is a very high fever, you're very sick, you're usually, that'll burn through, and when that fever breaks, you'll feel better.
So basically, if you have a fever or the flu, get a thermometer.
Get a thermometer and monitor that. If it starts to go about 104 for an adult, that starts to get, what's going on here?
Okay. So if it's 104, go to the doctor.
105 is like you should be at the doctor's.
Okay. So at 103, get the phone number ready.
Yeah, and again, you monitor the symptoms. If you're not vomiting and there's not a lot of that going on. But a fever is a good thing. Sometimes if I feel a cold coming on, I'll go sit in a sauna for 20 minutes to get that system moving.
And I've always felt like that helped me. And it's so crazy that this isn't like common practice, common knowledge. People think, way more people take either Tylenol or,
because you feel better.
And what's the common name for Tylenol for the non-Americans? Paracetamol or something?
Paracetamol.
Yeah. So way more people have taken a Tylenol or paracetamol than they have tried to sweat it out themselves or been in a sauna.
Yeah, you just let it. A virus is self-limiting, and you're going to be sick for a few days. Okay. So you just let that happen, because if you do it, it's better to be sick for 3 days than kind of ill for 5 or 6 or 7 days.
That 100%. I'd rather have that too. So for young kids, the 104, would that be too hot then?
100, and this becomes. Children tend to be able to burn a higher fever quicker. Okay. And for parents, it can be frightening. Yeah. Because they see that, the child is really sick and they want to make them better. And again, it's why do they have that illness? Is it truly something serious like meningitis, or is this just a fever? And so for a child with 103, 104 fever is usually they'll be fine. They'll get through that. Okay. But again, you want to monitor the symptoms. If you're worried, you can always. But a good pediatrician will be able to see this as, no, that's a normal thing. We'll let this, cool them down with a nice bath or something like that.
Okay, I like it.
But for adults that travel here, if you got a fever, great.
Good. Go in the sauna.
Burn that sucker out.
Okay, I like that. So other common questions that people would have is then, one of the reasons why people want insurance is they're like, well, what if I get sick while traveling? The nice thing about seeing doctors, especially here in Thailand, but in a lot of Southeast Asia, it's often cheaper to go pay cash than it would be with insurance.
Yes. Well, I haven't been to a physician here, but I know many people who have. And what was your doctor? You had an ultrasound that was...
Yep. So I saw the doctor, had an ultrasound. It was $65.
Yeah, that would be much more in America. That'd be several $100s.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
And so in general, I think like there's something called medical tourism, where a lot of people will actually come to Thailand and pay cash for either dentistry work, for some surgeries.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper than just the copay or the deductible.
Yes, especially for major
insurance.
surgeries. There's that famous hospital in Bangkok,
Okay.
Bumrungat,
Yeah.
I forget the name of the word.
World class hospital.
World class, and people, if you need something like a hip replacement, it'll literally be a third of the price.
Okay.
Here, I get my teeth cleaned every time I come to Chiang Mai because it's $25 and it's done by a dentist.
Yeah.
As opposed to the assistant.
And so back home, if you didn't have health insurance, how much would it cost to get your teeth cleaned?
It depends on the dentist, but usually over $100.
Okay. And I think sometimes, even with insurance, you still have to pay $25.
Yeah, there's still a copay for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the reasons why I don't have health insurance while living in Thailand. But then, and so for most of the time, so let's say you need medication, you need antibiotics, you need, even if you need a cast, you can just go to the hospital or the pharmacy and you can pay. It's not going to bankrupt you.
Sure.
It'll be a lot cheaper than it is back home. Yeah. Probably the same.
But the thing you would get it for is disaster care. If you got if you got hit by a motorcycle or something like that, and you needed surgery, it would still be several $1,000s. Okay. And the insurance generally will cover you for those things.
Okay. So let's definitely talk about that. I think even before that, I was even without any kind of insurance. If knock on wood, but if you get hit by a bike or something and you have major surgery, it's not going to make you bankrupt. It'll cost you thousands of dollars, but it won't be like in the U.S. would it be,
No, it won't. I don't know anywhere in the world that has healthcare is as expensive as the U.S.
Okay.
And if you have good insurance in the U.S., you're fine, and more people tend to have that now.
So one of the reasons why I actually didn't get insurance when I was in the U.S. is I knew I should have it, so I looked into it and I looked at plans and I found one. I was like, okay, I think it was $300 a month, and I was like, I can afford this. It's going to be a big expense, but I should get it. But then I actually read the fine print and I saw my deductible was something like $10,000.
Yeah, so you get that in case, for example, a friend of mine recently had his appendix out. Mm-hmm. He was hiking in the woods. He was camping, had terrible stomach pain, and he ended up crawling out of the woods and had to go to the hospital and ended up having a couple more days because there were some complications. And the whole ordeal the bill was $36,000, right? So if your deductible is $10,000, you're still going to save $26,000 that you would be, and so it's a high deductible for a disaster.
Okay.
You got any surgery where you got it, we got to be put under is going to cost you. I mean, this is an appendicitis. Yeah. It was $36,000 to have his appendix removed. That seems insane to me.
So I think at that time, the reason why I decided not to get it at all was I figured I didn't have $10,000 anyways. Right. I barely had the $300 in the bank, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna get billed $10,000, I might as well get billed $30,000.
Right. When you can work with hospitals to work some of that stuff out.
Okay.
That is, right.
But, not the best move in the world. That was kind of just my rationale, my thinking.
The U.S. is the one place where I actually think about I should have health insurance, because if I get something as dumb as appendicitis, they're going to charge me $36,000. Okay. If I had appendicitis in Portugal and I didn't have insurance, I don't know what it would cost, but I'm sure it wouldn't cost anywhere near that. Yeah. And
it'd be something that you could it'll put a jam on you, but you could pay it off in 6 months. Yeah. Okay. So you have insurance back in the U.S.
I have health insurance in the U.S. Yes.
Okay. And I know you said that.
But it's like yours. It's disaster insurance. It's my deductible is like $5,000 or something.
Okay. Do you know what you pay per month for that?
It's close to $300.
Okay.
Not quite.
And who is it with?
Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay. Do you know why you guys chose that?
It was the best. It was the cheapest plan for what we needed.
Okay. Yeah. And I know it's confusing because there's like the HMO and then there's the normal one.
Yeah. Fortunately, my wife is very good at researching this stuff, and she went through that whole painful process to find out what was best for our particular situation.
Okay.
But that was it.
But not like a universal recommendation.
No, and we needed something that covered us in Portugal.
Okay.
Because to get residency, you need coverage there.
Okay, makes sense. So there are travel insurances that are kind of made for travelers or digital nomads. One's called World Nomads. I looked at it and it's very expensive. But I've also seen personal friends who have posted on their Facebook saying like, hey, this happened and World Nomads paid out, so they are recommended.
Yeah, no, I know people who, for example, have I've worked with my wife and went to get blood work and submitted the blood work to the travel insurance and it was covered.
Okay, perfect. I personally use, I have scuba diving insurance.
Oh, nice.
Through Divers Alert Network, Dan.
Oh, wow. And
they happen to have some travel insurance that you can that is kind of add on to their diving insurance. So the reason why I've had it for 5 years now is because as a dive master, when you're working in the diving field, you're required to buy this dive insurance.
Right.
Because if you ever get the bends, if you ever get a decompression illness, it's very expensive. It's like a $30,000 treatment.
Right. And necessary to live.
Yeah. And necessary to live. And immediately, like you need it immediately.
Right away. And usually need a helicopters involved in there somewhere.
Exactly.
Right.
And what's great about Dan is they are a nonprofit and they cover the helicopter. So if you're diving in some remote island somewhere, they will actually cover that, which is why I got them. I paid, not that much more, maybe $100 more a year for their travel insurance. And that actually covers me for emergencies or hospital visits anywhere outside of the US. So unfortunately, I'm completely screwed if I ever go back to the US, which is one of the reasons why I don't go back very often. But while traveling, and the reason why I know that they do pay out is when I had to go to the hospital, before I did, I called them and said, hey, I'm in South Africa, I hurt my leg, which hospital can I go to, what am I covered for? And they were super cool, and they said, they're like, well, before that, let me, they're like, are you paying a lot for this call? Do you want us to call you back?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, no, it's fine. And they're like, okay, well, do you have friends in South Africa, or should we send you a taxi to bring? Yeah. And I was like, wow, thank you. And they're like, are you covered with your hotel? Do you want us to extend it for you? And I was like, wow, this is really, really nice.
Wow. Yeah. Did they pay for your visit?
And then, so I asked, I said, is there a specific hospital I need to go to? And they're like, you can go anywhere you want, get whatever you need, and we'll cover you up to $20,000.
Oh my God. How much did that cost you? What, the insurance?
It's like $150 a year. It's very cheap.
That's very cheap.
So if you guys are scuba divers, I would absolutely get this. I don't,
Can you just be a patty diver? Do you have to be a...
Yeah, I think you could just be any, like... I
open water, if you have your open water.
I think if you have open water, you can get it, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I think the only reason why they're so lenient is because diving accidents don't actually happen very often.
Right.
So I think they just have this big endowment of people like me who've had it for 5 years, or most likely the people in this program have had it for 20 years,
right, and never
used it,
right,
and they have their primary care back home, so they just don't really use it.
Right.
So when they do get a call, they're very nice to you.
Oh,
so
great.
Yeah, basically they said we'll cover everything. Just keep a copy of the receipts. I'm actually not going to file because I think all in all it was like $200.
Oh, okay.
So right. it's not worth my time to file, but it was nice knowing.
So healthcare in South Africa is also quite affordable then.
Yeah, it was $130 for the doctor's visit and the cast.
Yeah, that's pretty good. How long were you with the doctor?
You know what? What's funny is I was with the doctor for actually quite a while. He really explained everything to me. He sat down, talked to me about it, told me the options, told me talked to me about everything. And then afterwards, he apologized, saying, "Hey, I'm sorry that I didn't have more time to spend with you." And I said to him, I was like, "This is 10 times as much time as a doctor in the U.S. would have spent."
That's good.
So yeah, as many problems as South Africa has, surprisingly their hospital system was actually pretty decent.
Fantastic.
And then here in Chiang Mai, easy $65. So $200 in total. I'm not going to bother claiming it.
Right. And you're feeling better.
And I'm feeling better, so I'm happy with that. But it was nice to know that if I needed surgery, which was a chance,
right.
Like when I first, so so basically what had happened was I was warming up for CrossFit. So I can't actually blame CrossFit because I wasn't even doing the workout for it. But I think also even during the warm up, you kind of in this group of 20 people, you're your adrenaline's pumping. You're you're probably jogging a bit faster than you would normally.
You were just doing like high knee skipping stuff.
we're doing high knees. So I probably pushed it a little bit too hard, which is my own fault completely. But it felt like someone threw a baseball in the back of my calf.
Right.
And I heard a pop, and at first I actually thought it was a cramp, and I thought it was a bad cramp. I was honestly a little bit embarrassed, thinking like, oh my god, like I'm warming up for this. What's going on? And this was literally a minute after the coach had just introduced me to the whole class, and I'm there like just limping. I can't do the warm up, and then luckily, right as that happened, this girl pulls up for CrossFit, and she happens to be a massage therapist. So she brings me back to the gym, lays me down, and at first we thought it was a cramp, so she started kind of massaging around it, and it actually felt better that she was doing it, but obviously she couldn't fix the problem.
Right.
I guess here's a question: is if let's say it really was 100% ruptured, would that massage have made it worse? Or
it wouldn't have helped. I mean, it would have. Depends on the massage, but if it's ruptured, it'd be too painful to massage it.
Okay, so I would
usually a lot of it bruises very easily.
Yeah.
It's very painful. An actual ruptured muscle is I wouldn't. You wouldn't want her rubbing on it.
So my body would naturally just say
it would be
stop.
too painful.
Okay.
Yeah. At that stage, at that acute stage, it would have been too painful. Yeah.
So in general, will our bodies tell us if it's too painful? So there's always gonna be a bit of pain, right? So you rub it.
Yeah, and there's so many different kinds of pains,
Okay.
right? There's I worked out and I'm sore versus I get a sharp pain every time I step, right?
Okay.
These are two very different symptoms, but the pain is the body's way of saying, hey, pay attention here, something's going on.
Okay.
And there's no such thing as normal pain, right?
Okay.
It's always something going on. Is soreness pain? It's kind of pain, but
Yeah.
I don't really consider soreness from working out the same as that kind of thing where all of a sudden you can't put weight on it and it hurts every time you move. That's something's wrong. Pay attention to it.
All right, that definitely makes sense. So if you hurt yourself, you hurt a muscle, that body's natural tendency is to rub it.
Your body's natural tendency is to rub it. Yeah, it's like if you bump your head and you rub your hand over it, and that actually disrupts the nociception enough so that that's a way to take the pain away, right? So if that hurts and you rub your skin like that, it'll feel better.
Okay.
Briefly, and it's a natural reflex.
So if you knock on wood, but if this ever happens to you guys, you hurt your leg, you hurt your muscle, you will naturally want to rub it. Go ahead and rub it.
It's not going to hurt you.
It might maybe bring some more blood to it. It might help it a bit.
Yeah, it's just the same thing. Like if you ever had a dentist who really knew what they were doing, and when they gave you the shot, before they gave you the shot, they put their finger on your gum and moved your jaw or moved your cheek. You ever had that happen?
No.
Well, when they do that, it disrupts the signal going for the needle going in. And good dentists will do this. They'll shake your cheek, and as that goes in, you won't feel it. It'll be literally painless. It's the same thing. You whack your head and you rub it.
Okay.
You overstimulate another area, and it'll disrupt that pain.
Okay. And then if you're gonna make it worse, your body would tell you hey, stop touching it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pay attention to pain. Pay attention to pain.
Okay.
People ignore pain. They'll push through the pain. And if it's soreness, that's one thing. If it's actual sharp pain, it's stop.
Well, I guess the question about soreness. So let's say you're really sore from a workout. Is it bad to get a massage the next day?
No, absolutely not bad to get a massage next day. No. Okay. Usually feels good.
Okay.
Getting blood moving, getting lymph moving in those areas definitely speeds up healing. I'm a huge fan of massage. Good massage. Okay, I like it.
So other things, kind of last minute things that people might be scared of, right? So if you guys are coming to Thailand, for example, I guess what I would probably recommend is check with whatever healthcare provider you have already.
Many of them will cover you while you travel.
Okay. So then if that covers it already, then don't worry about it.
Right.
If you don't have to worry about, getting antibiotics or getting cold or getting food poisoning, because you can just go to a pharmacy. And in these cities, Bangkok and Chiang Mai anyway, there's fantastic physicians and hospitals. Okay. If you break a leg or need surgery for something like this, accident, you want to have some kind of travel insurance.
Yep.
Okay.
Or your insurance to cover you in that case. Yeah.
Or your insurance to cover you.
And it happens. The most common is people renting motorcycles. And you see it all the time, right? They rent a motorcycle. They're not used to the scooter, and they're not used to the traffic, and usually not terrible, but they fall off and they get road rash. You walk into any waiting room here, you'll see some foreigner with terrible road rash, and it's usually a motorcycle issue.
So just double check with your insurance carrier that it covers that, because usually it doesn't, and if it does, it'll say you need a motorcycle license for it to cover.
Yeah.
Or I guess you can just not tell the hospital that you were on a motorcycle.
Right, or you got sideswiped or whatever.
Yeah. So what about fears of like long-term illness? Like, let's say you're traveling. Let's say you go quit your job back home, so you no longer have their health insurance. You just bought some travel insurance, and you come out to Thailand. And you just you care for your traveling, and unfortunately, you get diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah, your question is, then what?
Then what?
If that was the case, I'd go home.
Would you?
Yes, and in today's, with the new, and again, I can only speak for America, but I'm sure it's like this in other countries. If you go home and you don't have insurance, nowadays you can get it. I think if you're from England or something, that you're covered automatically. Something like that, I would go to be around family and a physician who's going to follow me through that illness the whole time.
Okay. So unfortunately, cancer is such a real thing.
Yep.
And it's more common than I think people know. I think a lot of people are fortunate where they've never had a family friend or never had anyone in their family get it themselves.
I don't know anybody who doesn't know somebody who's gotten cancer.
It's
maybe not in their family. Do you know anybody? Do you know people who have cancer?
So before Larissa's mom, never met anybody, even extended family, who's ever had cancer.
Well, you just didn't ask.
And you know what? To be honest, I think maybe kind of growing up in my upbringing, my like the Asian American upbringing, we just didn't talk about it.
That could be it. But you for sure knew somebody whose mother had breast cancer or whose father had colon cancer. There's, research that I've seen or stats that I've seen says 1 in 4 people.
Yeah.
And I don't know how accurate that is, but that's been my experience. I don't know anybody who doesn't know somebody who, either a family member or a friend or a friend's parent, who hasn't had a battle with cancer. Okay. It's too common.
So kind of best ways to prevent this?
Yeah, it's all lifestyle.
Yeah,
I mean, we live in a toxic environment. We can't escape that. So you do your best, right? Okay. People start off their day, in a toxic way. They'll brush their teeth with Crest that's got sodium lauryl sulfate and aspartame in it, and then they'll drink out of their soft plastic water bottle, and then they'll have a Diet Coke for dinner or for lunch, and then they'll they're had a very high stress job, and it's one thing after the other. It's all lifestyle stuff. You do your best. So what is your best? Eat clean food. Okay. Exercise. Okay. Control your stress. Don't smoke. All the common sense things, and worrying about it is one of the ways to get it. Okay. Right? Because in my view, that what you think about, what you worry about, gets bigger. So I don't worry about cancer. What I focus on is eating right, doing exercise, having a good relationships, controlling stress. All of these things will lead to a healthier life. Will I avoid cancer? I don't know. Yeah. I'd like to. I'd like to think I do, but I don't ever think about it. Okay. It doesn't cross my mind that I'm going to get cancer. It doesn't occupy a thought. Now, if I was a smoker, I should be worried. Okay. If I drank 4, 5, 6 drinks a day, I should be worried, right? Okay. If I ate shit all day long, I should be worried.
Okay. So my kind of plan with this has always been, so I honestly don't think about it either, which is a good thing probably, but I did think about it once and just said, okay, what would my plan be? And I think kind of exactly what you said. I can try to be as healthy as possible. So, there's all these, like after people get cancer.
Yeah, then they come to Jesus moment. Right? Yeah. Then the changes happen.
And then they're like, okay, I need to eat more fresh vegetables. I need to eat less processed food. I need less all crap. Yeah. So I decided, I was like, what, let me just eat that now.
Start now.
So I started now. Same thing.
The worst thing that happens is you feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
So same thing with exercise. Unfortunately, so cancer itself, it's such a complicated thing, but it's also just, in general, if you break it down, it's just you're just being.
It's a system out of balance.
Yeah, and your body is not healthy. Something's wrong.
Something is wrong.
Immune system's low.
That's right.
Yeah,
and so you battle it through structural, chemical, and emotional balance.
Okay. So big reason why you shouldn't stress, have a super high stressful job, or have a stressful relationship, or have be in a poisonous environment.
Yeah, heart disease, cardiovascular disease, cancer, in general all around, what am I doing this for? Right?
Okay.
You can, and sometimes, although you might not be able to control your environment, the first thing you can start to do is control how you respond to that environment.
Okay.
And then people just can't quit their jobs that they hate because they have others. But so you find ways to view it differently. But it's as important as, like, you know, stopping smoking, because these things, they literally kill you.
So I'm sorry for you know, any of you guys who listen who smoke. I honestly have no respect for you guys, because
But you understand, addiction's a disease,
Yeah.
right? So people smoke for emotional reasons, and so I have a lot of compassion for smokers, because I'm sure if you ask them, they would rather be a non-smoker.
Yeah.
All of them would rather be a non-smoker.
Okay.
But there's something that's driving that desire, something that is saying that there's a slow suicide happening.
Yeah.
So what's the picture behind the picture? There's always an emotional reason why someone picks up something that's deadly like that.
Right.
And it's, you know, I don't know any smoker who doesn't know about cancer. In today's world, they know. If they're a Westerner, they know.
I think
so. There's an emotional part behind that.
I think people absolutely know. They just choose to not think about it, to put it off, because you're probably right, because there's something else going on in their life.
There's always pain that's being
But-
covered up with that addiction.
If you guys smoke, figure out what that pain is, get treatment, stop, because
That's the key.
it's terrible.
Figure out what the pain is.
Yeah.
Treat that, and then the desire to smoke will be less.
And if you are around people who smoke,
Get out.
Get out. Don't be around them.
Walk away.
You know, and I used to be more tolerant, where if I was, like, let's say I was outdoors and someone was smoking at the table next to me, I used to be like, okay, whatever, it's not that big a deal next door. But Larissa's mom got lung cancer from secondhand smoke.
Oh yeah, it's common.
And to me, that is the most unfair thing in the world.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why I avoid smokers completely.
Walk away.
And now I completely walk away. I'll change tables.
Yeah.
You know, if you know, I'll politely ask someone, like, you know, please don't smoke next to me. So that's what we can do.
Yes.
So I used to have. So there's so much information out there, like mixed information about, like, treating cancer.
Yeah. That's a big industry.
So before I actually spoke to you the other day, I had already decided in my mind and said, you know what, knock on wood, I don't want to ever get cancer. But if I ever do, I'm not going to get chemo. I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm going to be extra healthy and try to fight it. And if it doesn't work and it takes my life, it takes my life. But then you mentioned something about one specific cancer that has a very high cure rate.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with cancer is, you know, if I had cancer, I would do whatever was required, and part of that is finding out what works. There are certain leukemias where chemotherapy cures, you know, in the high 90%. If I had one of those leukemias and the research showed that people who had, you know, if you got chemo, that your cure rate was in the 90%, sign me up.
Okay.
If I had pancreatic cancer, and I know that people who get chemo and pancreatic cancer, that they have that chance is much lower. It's like, you know, I probably wouldn't go down that road for that, but that's my own personal choice.
Okay. And the same with lung cancer as well?
Certain lung cancers, you know, people survive lung cancer. They get the surgery, they get the proper chemo for that particular type of tumor, and they survive it. Like Lance Armstrong, right? Okay. I believe his cancer went to his lungs, but it would depend, and you know, it's case by case. There are some times where that, you know what, the cure rate for this particular cancer is high with this particular treatment. Sign me up. I'm also going to do everything else. I'm going to do all the lifestyle steps. I'm going to do all the crazy, wacky stuff that's out there. I'm throwing it all at it.
Okay,
right?
That absolutely makes sense. So what would would it be appropriate, you know, to ask the doctor, say, what is the cure rate? Like, you know, like if I do go through this protocol, if I go through chemo, like, what is the chances?
Well, yeah, and they'll tell any oncologist will tell you.
Okay, and will they say like 14%?
They'll tell you they should be able to know what the research shows. They keep those numbers, and they say, you know, people who have this cancer, here's what the outcome is.
Okay,
those numbers are generally pretty good. There's just statistics.
Well, and will they be honest with you? So let's say you had lung cancer and you said, you know, and they suggest chemo, and would they say, like, to be honest, you know, the cure rate for this is less than 10%?
Depending on a good oncologist will tell you a good doctor is going to tell you the truth, and you can choose to do. For some people, a 1 in 10 chance is all they need.
Really? Okay. So in that case, would it be okay for you to be like, okay, I'm gonna get a second opinion?
Always.
Okay.
Always. And any good oncologist will say, yes, here's 3 other great guys who I think would be good to look at this. Okay. Remember, it's your health.
Yeah.
And you're the one who, inevitably, you're the one who gets to say. You get to say, yes, I want to go down this path. If you have cancer and you go to an oncologist and some of them are just not the best people or not, doesn't look like they have your best interest in mind, or they're too busy, or they're distracted, find another one, because you'll find someone who will listen to you and say, yes, let's find the best approach here.
Okay. So in general,
doctor shop is a good thing.
So in general, would you take that the referral, or would you say, or would you be like, you know what, let me find my own? Because
I would get 2 or 3.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay.
Fine, and if they all start saying the same thing, there's a reason for that. But a second opinion, when you have cancer, a second opinion is par for the course. You need one.
Okay. So, I know this is a big topic, but in general, because in most cases, except for the one that you said was a high cure rate.
I'm saying there's a lot of them, but for leukemia is a common one,
okay.
where someone who's got a certain type of blood dyscrasia, some leukemia, and there's certain chemos, and you look at the cure rate for them, and it's very high. And I mean, almost like it cures it.
Okay. So in those cases,
I'm not an expert in cancer. I'm sure there are other ones like that. This is one that I'm familiar with.
So in those cases, 100%, you
want the stats. Get the stats, and then you make your decision.
Okay. But in general, I would say these things are, are concerns that we should think about as a traveler, but it's not our top priority. We don't have to specifically, search out a healthcare provider that will cover us in this small chance.
I certainly don't.
Okay.
Right? But I'm at a low cancer risk.
Yeah.
I eat well, I exercise, I don't smoke, and I don't drink very much. Right?
Okay.
If I had the opposite thing, I might start to worry about that. But most people who would live those lifestyles don't think about it until it actually happens. And cancers take a long. You can smoke for 30 years before that shows up. You can smoke for 40 years and never show up. It doesn't mean you're going to have other health things, your bad heart, bad lungs, but.
Okay. Awesome. So I think we covered a lot in this episode. We're kind of excited about it. So kind of to wrap it up, is prevention is key.
Prevention is key. Okay. Yes, take care of your body now.
Yeah. So if you didn't do those physical tests that we talked about earlier, go ahead and rewind this or visit the links. Do those, because I promise you, it's so important. It's
so important, especially if you're an athlete. If you don't have those positions and you rehab them, you will be stronger once you have those positions. Okay.
Start eating healthy. Start lowering your stress. Don't worry too much about some of these big things. Yeah.
Find ways to view your world differently.
All right, and see more of the world with us. Shannon, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks, John.
If people want to check out your website or get in touch,
I have a website, drshannonweeks.com. Although it's not visited, I don't spend a whole lot of time on it. But you can see information about me and some videos and stuff.
Okay, and they can check out your wife, who does more of the.
My wife has a full online consultation business. She's dralexisshields.com.
Okay, and she's who I use for my blood tests and for Basically, I'm very, very lucky that I have both of you as friends. But what's nice is, by having you on the show, I'm kind of extending your knowledge, but also your help to everyone listening. So
I greatly appreciate it,
and appreciate you being on. And I'll see everyone next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Travel Like a Boss podcast. If you want to hear more, including the bonus How to Choose the Perfect Niche episode, join our mailing list at travellikeabosspodcast.com. See you next week, and remember, if you want to travel like a boss, you need to be your own boss. So start your online business today and start living the lifestyle you've always dreamed of.